Hi everyone, I'm Troy. Welcome to another episode of the vlog. This is actually one of the last ones I'm going to be recording for the Christmas vlog because the 24th and 25th is largely recorded. I just need to finish editing it, which enough about that. We'll talk about that later. And by talk about later, I mean I'm not going to talk about it anymore. So this is episode 22, and today I want to talk about pattern use. And it just to be brutally honest, I was going to talk about this, but I didn't finish it in time. But pattern use is kind of related in a weird way. So I will quickly talk about this. So this is a balaclava that I'm making for my friend, who wants to remain off social media, so I'm not going to say their name. Anyway. So I'm making this for a friend, and this is going to be like a dog shaped balaclava, and I've done another turned brim here, so that way they can choose whether or not it's a hat or balaclava. And right now I'm just working on picking up my stitches from me ripping it out to change the shaping, and that's why it's not done. But part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this here is because this pattern, which I'm not going to be making available because it kind of crosses a line I'm not comfortable with when it comes to me using patterns, and we'll get to that, okay? So the reason why I want to talk about pattern use is not only this, but also it's kind of topical in the YouTube sphere right now. Some of you may see, I don't know if you do. It's a fairly popular video, went pretty viral there. It's been up for, I think, 3 weeks, maybe closer to 4, and it's garnered 10 million views. But without naming names, but if you know, you know. There was a British YouTuber that posted a video that very thoroughly went through the videos of an American YouTuber and a Canadian YouTuber to demonstrate that these two YouTubers steal all of their work, that these two YouTubers steal work from other creators, not this guy's work. So there's I'm purposely trying. So British guy accuses American and Canadian YouTubers from stealing all of the work that the Canadian and the American YouTuber was doing. They stole all of their work from other creators. And then in some cases, pretty blatantly, the American YouTuber basically just retold a whole documentary that you can find on Netflix, reused some of the videos that in that documentary, put filters on it, flipped it, so that way that the YouTube filters doesn't pick up on copyright, which is something that all YouTubers have to worry about. Every time I upload a video, it goes, before it's allowed to go live, YouTube checks through it to see if there's going to be copyright claims against it. And if there is, it tells you where they are, and you have the option to either clip that section out of the video, and YouTube will let you do that. It's sophisticated enough to let you do that. Or if it's something you can't just clip out, then you'll have to re-upload and do that manually, re-render the video, which will take hours, and then anyway, so the American YouTuber was very specifically plagiarizing, and they were taking steps to not get caught for it. And then the Canadian YouTuber was stealing content, but also kind of hiding their tracks behind, citing some things, but not other things. So it sounded like this person did their own research. And I mean, in a way that they did, but they didn't extrapolate their research from multiple sources and then break it down into their own words. This person was just reading full paragraphs from the work and then as voiceover, and then would quote one line from the work and then would go on and just continue reading without telling the audience that this person was just reading from the. So it caused a big hubbubaloo. These two other YouTubers, unfortunately, because of the YouTube space, they've gotten a lot of hate, and some BS has gone down. But I feel like the whole talk of plagiarism is kind of topical right now, and I want to get on that bandwagon. Anyway, but I wanted to talk about it more about how it affects this community, how it affects the yarn and pattern designers, well, not even just knitting designers and crochet designers, but this also affects sewing designers as well. And I just wanted to talk about how pattern use and how people buy and use and don't buy, but still use, trying to be kind about that, patterns in general. So the first thing I want to differentiate between paid patterns and free patterns. And like, I'm just going to say, all of this is my opinion. I'm not an expert. I'm not a lawyer. This is just how I look at things. I thought that this might be a fun conversation to have, but then I keep forgetting until I sit down and realize I'm talking at a camera and not talking to you specifically. The only back and forth that we ever get to have outside of the few people that know me, the few people that are here in the Maritimes that know me and talk to me in person, like the only contact I have is down in the comments. So if you want to have a conversation with me down in the comments, please do. I do read every comment. Enough of that preamble though. So I want to differentiate like my thoughts between free patterns and paid patterns. So when it comes to free patterns, I don't mind, again, I don't know if this is correct, but I don't mind showing free patterns on my podcast. I don't mind like telling you exactly how they're done. I don't mind showing off exactly how they're done, which I'm going to be doing tomorrow, in fact, because they are paid patterns. What I do in those instances, of course, is not that I say that, oh, I'm doing this myself. No, I always say, this is this pattern, this is where you can get it, and then in the description, you can find the pattern that I'm talking about down in the description. Mostly so that way I don't have to answer, oh, what's the pattern called? Just preemptively save those questions, which, you know, maybe I should stop doing that, so that way people comment down in the comments, be like, what's the pattern name? What are you doing? To drive that algorithm. Anyway, so that's how I feel about free patterns on the channel. And you'll know that if you've watched the channel for a while, that when it is a paid pattern, like I will talk about the pattern and I will talk about like vague techniques that isn't like inherent to the pattern, but I won't show you charts. I won't show you the work. The only part of the pattern that I will show you is like the splash page. So like the main page where it's like, here's the picture of the project, here's the yarn that you use, the needles that you use, and like the notions that you need. Like I'll show that because that tells you what you need for the pattern, but it doesn't tell you what the pattern is, right? So if you get really excited about a pattern that I talk about on the podcast, then you can go find the things that you need, make sure that you have everything you need before buying the pattern. That's how I look at it. And it's a lot of the stuff that I talk about when it's the paid for pattern, it's usually the stuff that you can find on the Ravelry page for free as well. So and the reason why I do that is because as a pattern designer, I wouldn't want another creator or another designer to take my pattern, talk about it on a bigger platform, because like I have a small platform here, talk about it on a bigger platform and then just like show the charts that I have in my pattern, which if you just stop the video, which, you know, most people aren't going to do that, but if you wanted to, you could stop the video on a chart and you'd be able to do my pattern for free. Just be able to like work it out, right? And that feels bad. So I'm do my best to prevent that from happening on this channel because I wouldn't want that to happen to my work, right? And then for some of my audience that might be a little bit more old school, where, you know, when you would get patterns, you'd get free patterns with balls of yarn, you'd find free patterns just available in local yarn shops and all of that. And you would find, if you had to pay for patterns, they were like 10 cents, 15 cents, 25 cents, right? And now when you go on Ravelry and you see patterns are like my patterns on Ravelry and on Etsy are $5 for my hat patterns. And if I release my Thunder Snow pullover at some point, that will be like $8 or $9. And a lot of like more popular designers, they have patterns that are, you know, between $4 and $15, right? And then when you get into buying pattern books, they can be as much as $40. So if you are of an older generation that is used to buying patterns, may not even had to buy them at all because many patterns were made to be free, just as like rip-offs from, not rip-offs. as in like tearaways from like pads that you could find at local yarn stores, or like if you bought a pattern, they'd be like 10, 15, 25 cents. And now they're, all of mine are $5 right now. And there's others that are, 8, 10, 15 dollars, which feels like a lot more money. And I mean, it is. And I'm not saying that anyone's wrong for thinking that that's a lot of money, because it is. It's just, I want to point out that there is a lot of work that goes into making a pattern. Like even for like my 3 hat patterns that I have available, I think it's actually up to 4 now. Other than the hat patterns that I have available to put on Ravelry, they're all $5. Like that is not just like 10 minutes of work, right? That is me coming up with a concept, which that might take only 15, 20, 30 minutes for me to like come up with the concept and like quickly sketch out some things. But then I have to do a test knit to see what I need to do to actually make it work, right? I'm not perfect. So like, I know that when I'm going along, like I will just fix mistakes as I go along. And sometimes I forget to mark down what mistakes I've made. So when I release a pattern, like I've done with the Amanda's hat, which if you go to episode 7 up in the iCard here, if you want to take part in that into that test knit, one person has already done a test knit, and it turned out beautifully. I'll talk about it here next week. But if you want to take part in that test knit, I'm going to leave that up. That version up for free forever, but I will be putting it on Ravelry, a full version that's been updated on Ravelry for sale in the new year. God, I'm all over the place today. Shameless plugs. Okay. I wrote out, this is the second take of me doing this, and the first time I was all over the place, so I wrote down some like talking points, and I'm still all over the place. So I'm sorry that I am all over the place today. I've done a lot of recording. And oh god, I look so tired. Jeez. Anyway, so moving along. So when it comes to when it comes to like paid patterns, there is some discussion, like when I say that, like not between me and any of my designer friends that I know personally, but there has been some online discussion, I should clarify, that about how to utilize free patterns. Not free pattern, paid for patterns, right? So some people, not even necessarily designer, but some people think that you should never, like when you buy a pattern, it is yours for you to do whatever you want with, including make copies of and give it to all your friends, which is not necessarily true. And then there's others that go to the other extreme where it's like, oh, I buy a pattern, no one can ever look at it. I will let you know what it was, how much it costs, and you can go buy it. Right? And I kind of fall, closer to the you need to buy your own pattern side, to be brutally honest, but I find I fall somewhere in the middle. Like for me, when it comes to my free patterns, I don't care what you do with my free patterns. I might have already touched on this. But I'll delete this if I haven't. And if I have, like the way that I look at free patterns and paid patterns is that if it's a free pattern, it's fair game. I don't mind talking about how it's put together. I don't mind showing the pattern. I don't mind. All I do is I make sure that the name of the pattern is up on the screen at some point at the beginning of me talking about it, and I always put the pattern down in the description and where you can find it. So that way, so like there a couple days ago when I talked about General Hogbuffer's stripe tees sock, that's a free pattern, and I waxed poetically on it, although I was told I could have been a little bit more emphatic, because people weren't clear whether or not I liked the pattern. But the pattern's down in the description. I put on the screen what it's called, put the name of the designer on the screen. I put this designer's page on the screen, on the description as well, because I want people to go find this pattern and love it as much as mine. And because of it being a free pattern, I talked about how the pattern is put together, because number one, it's so freaking cool. And number two, since it's a free pattern, like I don't feel like I'm taking advantage of someone's intellectual property for my own gain, right? Had it been a paid pattern, I would have been like, this is the coolest friggin' sock ever. Go buy it. Here's what it looks like, right? And I would allude to the different techniques. And you might have seen when I show off some of my pattern books and what patterns I'm doing, like I'm like very awkwardly covering parts of the book, so that way you can't see the pattern, because I paid for that book, right? So all of those designers deserve to have their work, be compensated fairly for their work, right? And if I were to just show parts, I just touched the mic, sorry. If I were just to show parts of paid patterns willy-nilly on the internet, like granted, I have a small channel, small audience, so it's not a huge deal for me to do it. But if the way that I look at it is that if a bigger platform went and showed one of my paid patterns off in such a way that people could just stop the video and then just read it and do my pattern, I would feel taken advantage of, honestly. So I try to be very cognizant of like how I treat free patterns and paid patterns, so that way I don't release information. But when it comes to my paid patterns, the way that I look at it is, yes, I don't want people showing like the pattern on their platform for anyone to see. I don't want people to take my pattern, copy it, and send it to all of their friends. But I don't mind if somebody were to go buy my pattern, make it, and then their friend, they have a friend or maybe two friends that are like, hey, can I borrow that pattern so I can do that too? I don't mind when people borrow patterns. I don't mind when people borrow patterns. Like the way that I think about that is like how you would borrow a book. Like if you went and bought a book and you read it and you liked it, and your friends say, hey, can I borrow that book? No one's going to bat an eye that you let your friend borrow a book. Doesn't matter. And I feel the same way for the pattern. So like that's how, but there's other things that I have feelings about, because like, so I don't have a problem with the whole book borrowing, like when it comes to that. What I do have a problem with is this is kind of a variation off of like me saying like a larger platform took one of my patterns and made it available for anybody to see. I'm running out of time. I should wrap this up. Running out of, if they it's the same as like somebody, but I don't work there anymore. I once had a customer, or in fact, this happened more than once, but there were customers that would come into a place that I used to work, and there was an instance shortly after we put out a pattern book that a number of my colleagues and I put together a pattern book for this space, and a couple of customers, well, I'm going to talk about a specific instances of this, but this has happened multiple times. A customer would, sometimes customers would come in, look at the pattern book, and then they would go over to a corner of the store where they don't think we can see it. They'd open the book and start taking pictures of some of the patterns that they like, so that way they didn't have to buy the book, right? And then when we would call them out on that and ask them to delete those photos because they're stealing work at this point, the way that these customers would react is that we are trying to take their firstborn child from them, right? And they would go on as if, it's normal for you to take pictures of a pattern book so that way you don't have to pay for the pattern book. Why is the book not shrink wrapped? I do this all the time. Kind of thing, right? That's not okay, because you are at this point, you were not even buying the pattern. You were opening a book, taking pictures of it, and then not letting that designer get compensated for the work. I feel like it's very much the same. I think I'm being pretty consistent here, because it's very much the same idea as borrowing a book from the library. Sure, here in Canada at the very least, you don't have to pay for library books, right? You can borrow a book for free, right? And then you can give it back for free, right? when it comes to a pattern, like there are knitting books that you can find in the library. You can borrow them for free and you can give them back for free, right? But the library system has like a system in place that those authors do get, those authors and in case designers do get compensated for their work. But like the idea is that if you borrow a book from the library, like that doesn't give you the right to like then photocopy the entire book for you to then print out and add to your collection on your own bookcase and then give the book back to the library. I mean, like that is a ridiculous example, but that's because the concept of doing that is ridiculous. So why would, copying a pattern or taking pictures of a pattern from a book be any different, right? Sure, it's a order of magnitude less work to do that for a pattern book because you only need 4 or 5 pages. But it kind of like feels the same to me. Anyway, so the other thing that can happen, and I've done this myself, is if you take a picture of a finished project, some skilled knitters can just look at the project and make it, right? And I know I have that ability because I've done that, right? And the way that I look at this whole thing when it comes to doing that sort of thing, like seeing a picture that you see online and then making it yourself, I don't have a problem with that. As long as you don't make money from it. So like if you see something online, like for example, I'll see if I can't find the picture, but I'll put a picture up of a hat that I made for a friend for a Christmas present. So I made a cat hat based off of a different cat hat that my friend had a while ago, and she lost it, right? So one of my other friends asked me to make it for her as a Christmas gift. So this other friend paid for the materials and paid me a little extra for doing the work, so that way he could give her this cat hat. And he sent me a picture of a cat hat that was available on eBay. So I made this cat hat, and just based off of based off the picture and based off another pattern that I had purchased a number of years ago to get some shaping ideas, and based it off, and then had another pattern as a baseline, which I'll put them both up here. Here, put the patterns that I used to make this hat down in the description. I think I took a couple pictures. Well, I know I took a few pictures of the hat, but I'm pretty sure that they were all on Snapchat. So I don't know if I have access. If I do, I'll put the hat up here. Anyway, so I did utilize the picture, utilized 2 different patterns, and made some stuff up as I went along to make this hat. And I think that's fine for me to have done that, as long as I don't then take this work and release it as a pattern after the fact. Or if I don't mass produce it and try to sell it as a thing for me to make, because that's not my intellectual property. Sure, my work has gone into it for making the product, but the intellectual property that I used to inspire making this hat, which was, I found a picture of the hat that I wanted to make, used it as the jumping off point for me to know oh, it needs to have ears, it needs to have ear flaps, ear flaps for your ears. It needs to have cat ears. I need to do duplicate stitching, that sort of thing, right? To make it. So I have a hat pattern in my library that I did shaping for ears that was suitable. So I used part of that pattern. And then I found another pattern online for free, which is the Purl SoHo ear flap hat. And I used that at the bottom. So for this particular hat, I did a provisional cast on. I did the top half of the hat. Then I picked up my provisional cast on, did the bottom half of the hat because the Purl SoHo works top down. The other one works bottom up. So I can Frankenstein these things together to make a really cute hat for my friend. And then I lined it, which I don't know if I did a very good job of that, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, so I don't think that there's a problem with you seeing and being inspired by a pattern that you see online and doing it for yourself, right? Or doing it as a gift or whatever. But where that line I think gets crossed is if I were to go then, after making this hat, go write a pattern based off of these other 2 patterns that I used and this picture, and then try to sell it, that's where the line kind of is for me, right? And going back to another story of working to help prevent like the intellectual properties from my knitters from being stolen, what I would make sure that my staff would do when I was running Belfast is that if customers were trying to take pictures of hats, I would let them take pictures of like the hat table, but I wouldn't let them take a close-up picture of a individual hat. Because I didn't want to be a total hard ass, right? Because like people want to take pictures of hats to show colors off to people to see whether or not they buy them. But then there's also people that are going to be like, all right, well, let me take a picture of this hat close up so that way I can then make a grid out of it and redo this hat and sell it for myself, right? So it's lots of weird gray areas in this whole thing. Yeah, I feel like I kind of rambled there for a little bit, but I have run out of time. I'm trying this new thing. I don't know if you noticed in the last video, but like the quality of the video is a little bit better. I'm trying to utilize the materials that I have, so like my phone camera, like what I'm using right now, to the fullest ability that it has. I noticed especially that in a few of the videos that I have done recently where I've had to like take the video and then zoom into the video, like the quality has dropped considerably. I've got a phone camera that has options to be better quality video, which I have used yesterday and today. It's just going to take a lot longer for me to edit. So while I'm working on making that work, just let me know if you've noticed a quality change here in just the video. And I will slowly zoom in on my face while I'm going over this, so that way you guys can really tell me if you can see the pores of my face. I'm wearing makeup today, so you can't tell. Anyway, without further ado, I think that's going to be enough for today, and I will see you guys tomorrow with another video about those friggin' cool socks, because I finished the first one, and I'm going to madly dash and get some stuff done on the second one, so that way I can show you some of the cooler bits of it. That video might be a little bit late, but we'll see. Bye, guys.